It's time to have a baby, Judith told me, talking to me like I was just a housekeeper. I asked my husband for help because her expectations were getting to be too much for me to handle. He said, "Okay, let's talk about it on our next day off." I was left out of this talk, though. It shocked me what I learned there. When I talked to my husband about it, Judith sneered with pride. "The woman I'm dating is pregnant. We no longer need a parasite like you that can have children. Please go." "Fine by me," I replied, feeling both relieved and angry. A month later, my worried Judith and her husband called me right away. "Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Patricia Westfield and I'm an insurance salesman. I'm 35 years old. John, my husband, is 31 years old. We got married last year after meeting 3 years ago. At first, I didn't see my younger, more handsome husband as a romantic interest, but he finally won me over with his relentless pursuit. Many women wish they had a marriage like ours, especially with a younger, better-looking guy. Even though things were bad, I thought I was happy. I hoped to have kids and buy our own house one day, but life often has other ideas. It all began with a simple comment from my husband. He said, "Mom slipped on the stairs and hurt her back." And there was some worry in his voice. "Is she okay?" I asked with some worry in my heart. "She's okay, but she can't go to her part-time job right now," he replied. "And since Dad isn't working either, I'm just wondering what they're going to do." The situation made him less happy than normal. Richard had been dealing with diabetes for a long time. Last year, his situation got worse, and he had to stay in the hospital. He's now back at home, but he can't go back to work. Their only sources of income were Judith's part-time job and their pension. I said, "That's worrying," because I felt sorry for their situation. Then they asked us to do something that would change our lives. I looked deeply into John's eyes as he took my hands in his. "Would you consider living with my parents?" I thought this might happen, but hearing the words made me think twice. I'd never heard a good thing about living with in-laws. I also felt like Judith always treated me like I stole her kid, which made the idea of living together seem almost impossible. I couldn't say no to John's request, though. "All right," I reluctantly agreed. A happy smile lit up his face, and he gave me a tight hug. "Say thank you. Getting married to you was the best choice I ever made," he said, and his happiness was contagious. Even though I was scared, I couldn't help but smile to reassure myself that everything would be okay. But after a month of living together, I was already wishing I hadn't made that choice. Judith asked Patricia, "Please bring the tea quickly." "Yes, right away," I said, trying not to show how angry I was. Judith said, "This tea is too lukewarm." When I brought it out, "What's wrong with you?" "I'm sorry," I said, feeling put down. Even though Judith's back pain was meant to be better, she didn't want to go back to her part-time job. Rather than working, she hung out at home all day and made me do all the jobs. To make things even worse, Richard spent all day playing at the nearby casino and kept asking me for money. I tried to talk to John about these problems. "It's annoying that they can't work. Let's try to understand," he would say, ignoring my worries. I tried to be patient because I thought it might just be the getting used to part. But things didn't get better after 3 more months, they only got worse. When John got home earlier than usual one night, I finally told him how upset I was. I told him, "I don't think I can keep living this way." It was hard on my mental and physical health to take care of the house and my job all by myself. But John, as always, grabbed my hands, looked me in the eyes, and begged, "Patricia, I know it's hard, but so are my parents. Please be patient for a little longer." He hugged me and said sorry for having to leave again to meet a coworker, then he walked out the door. I let out a deep sigh as I watched him leave. John has been out almost every night since we moved in with his parents, either late because he had drinks at work or not there at all on the weekends. I felt alone in this house, even by my husband, who was meant to be my friend. I told myself that I had made this choice. In order to make things better, I chose to work harder to win Judith over. But my resolve was broken quickly one day when I was cleaning the living room. Judith put me in a corner. Are you 35 years old? What about having children? She asked quickly. As I tried to hide my discomfort, I said, We're thinking about it. Well, you're not getting younger, she told her. You should get pregnant right now. I felt like her words were a hard order. That day went by, but after that it became a daily habit. Judith kept telling me over and over that I should get pregnant, as if it were a curse. It got too much for me. One night, John got home late as usual, and I frantically tried to talk to him. Could you ask your mum to stop pulling my chain about having a child? I begged. He was shocked and asked, Why so sudden? Every day she tells me to get pregnant, but I'm too busy with work and housework to even think about having a child right now. And you don't come home very often. When are we going to have time? I argued, and it was clear that I was angry. Please don't push me past my limit, I begged, feeling mentally and physically worn out. John gave me a soft rub on the back as I started to cry. He then smiled briefly and said, Okay, I'll talk to Mom about it on my next day off. That's it. Also, could you ask her to help with some of the housework? With a hint of hope in my voice, I asked. About that, John said, bringing up an interesting idea. What do you think about building 2 homes? John made a soft suggestion. You know, the problem now is that we're too close to each other. This caught me off guard. If we live in a duplex, we can keep our living rooms private. Every floor has a family. We won't have to see each other all the time that way. It seemed to make sense. Everybody would take care of their own room if they had their own place. I agreed and nodded, but then I thought about the money issues. But it must cost a lot to build a duplex, right? I inquired. John looked into my eyes and held my hand. I knew what was going to happen. Patricia, I need your help with something. You still have some money saved from before we got married, right? Could we put that down as a down payment? In fact, I had never planned to get married, so I had carefully saved 15 million yen for the future. Our costs went up after we got married, and I hadn't been able to save much, so I put this money away for when we had kids. I wasn't sure if I should agree right away, but John pressed. He promised to work harder and get a loan for the rest. I was so mentally and physically worn out that I couldn't think straight, so I gave in to his arguments. Dear Patricia, thank you. John smiled and said, I'll talk to them about it on my day off. Even though I was scared, I hoped this would make things better. John promised to talk to his parents about it on his next day off, which he did. He told me to stay away from the talk because he thought my presence might make Judith angry. I chose to kill time at a nearby coffee shop. I looked at the clock in the cafe after a while to see what time it was. It had been an hour since I left home. I reached for my phone because I thought it might be time to hear from John, but was shocked to find that I had left it at home. I hurried back home because I thought John might have already tried to get in touch with me. When I got there, I did so quietly because I thought they might still be talking. A pair of strange women's shoes caught my eye in the entranceway, which I thought was strange. I went inside quietly, though, because I could hear voices in the living room. I thought the conversation was still going on. I walked slowly up the stairs to my room while trying not to make any noise. Suddenly, a phrase from the conversation stopped me. Really, congratulations. I'm so glad for you. Everything will be fine once we build the house and get a divorce. It hurt like hell when they said those things. Split up? Did I understand that right? I hid close and listened in shock as the conversation went on. It always seemed odd to me that John would marry someone older. It's about the cash. She saved up a lot of money, and she'll believe anything if you hold her hand and look into her eyes. That's the reason you didn't have kids with her. If someone has such a sad face, I wouldn't want their kids to be with them. Our kids will be beautiful, though, thanks to Jennifer. A horrible truth was told during the talk that almost made me fall to my knees. Everything was a lie. John married me for the money, but he was seeing someone else and had a kid with her. Now he was going to build a house for himself and his lover with the money I had saved. He probably went to see her when he wasn't around recently. To keep my anger in check, I quietly got my phone from my room and left the house. It was clear where I wanted to go next, a detective service. I needed proof that John was cheating on me. John's hand, which he used to hold, was now clenched in anger, and the eyes he used to look into were red with anger. I swore I would get back at them both as I walked towards the office. There had been a month since that terrible meeting day, and I had enough proof of the affair. My husband and in-laws called me into the living room for a talk just as I was thinking about when to talk to them. On the table, I saw a stack of custom home magazines. They happily picked out their dream homes and said, "We were thinking it's time to talk about building our new house." I looked at them coldly and told them straight out, "I'm not building any house." My husband looked shocked, and Judith got very angry right away. She snapped, "What are you talking about?" I said again, "I said I'm not building a house." My husband, who was confused and angry, was about to say something when I threw the proof of his affair down on the table. "Jen, I know about your affair," I told him. "She's already in her second trimester." And the color left his face. Judith, on the other hand, laughed and yelled at me. "Well, if you know. John's partner is expecting a baby. Get out, you parasite that can have children." "Mother, wait," John began, but I loudly stopped him. "I'll leave." I gave him the papers I had signed for the divorce. "Please sign these now. I'm going to give them to the registry office." John didn't want to do it because he felt bad about losing the money, but Judith pushed him. "Don't worry, we'll get by with your money. Sign it right now. We no longer wish to see this parasite's face." John signed the forms after he quit. I took them, put my bags together, and left the house. I got my freedom right away when I went to the register office and turned in the divorce papers. After a month, my ex-husband called me several times. I reluctantly answered, only to be met by my angry ex-wife Judith. She screamed, "What does this mean? What are you talking about?" I didn't get angry. Her words were, "John has no money." I could not hold back a sigh. John only makes 170,000 yen a month. We can't even pay our phone and utility bills. It made sense. John had only given 50,000 yen for living costs because I was taking care of their house. He thought that his parents' home would cover the rest. Judith spent her pension on fun things for herself and never gave any money, so I had to pay for everything by myself. We were living off of our savings and my pay wasn't even enough. She screamed even louder when I told her this. "Why does John get paid so little?" "His job is with a big car company," I told her. "No, he works as a factory staff for a company that makes auto parts." Her shocked voice could be heard over the phone. John must have lied about his job and income. That's why she was so sure she could kick me out. "Sorry, please come back. Richard risked losing the house as collateral for a loan, and now we might be kicked out." Judith, my ex-wife, begged on the phone. When I found out that Richard had gambled away all of his money after losing access to my money, I was shocked. She told him, "Use your savings to pay off your debts." That was the last thing I could stand. "Stop being silly. You expect me to bail you out after you kicked me out on your own?" When I replied, I raised my voice for the first time. "Do something to help us, Patricia," my ex-husband begged in a sweet voice. "We're going to be homeless." It made me feel sick, though. "It's no longer my problem. What's going on with you?" I said it strongly. "But wait, the property division should give me half of your money," he begged desperately. "I'm sorry, but I saved that money before we got married. That's not part of the property split," I told him. At the end of the call, they were still upset. I told them that they would soon get a bill for alimony from my ex-husband for 3 million yen and from his lover for 1.5 million yen. The mistress's parents paid off her debt right away, but my ex-husband decided to let her pay over time. Afterward, neighbors told me that they lost the house because they couldn't pay back the bills. Now, the three of them were living in a Wi-Fi spot. Judith, who used to be my friend, started working part-time again, but Richard gambled away all of her money, including her pension. There was a lot of noise in the internet cafe, and the cops were called. My ex-husband got an ulcer from stress because he couldn't get married again because the mistress's parents wouldn't let him, and he had to take care of his annoying parents. After leaving my in-laws' house, I moved back in with my parents for a while. I finally found a great place to live and moved out, starting a future that was nothing like what I had imagined. It's nice to be able to live my life on my own terms now that I'm living alone.